People come into court every day with paper in their hands and a story on their lips. Usually the paper is a ticket, a complaint, a summons, or some other official reminder that actions have consequences. Usually the story is designed to make those consequences disappear. I have heard them all. The dog ate the registration. The cousin borrowed the car. The sign was too small. The officer was rude. The meter was unfair. The world, according to half the people who appear in court, is forever conspiring against them while they remain completely innocent. That is not new. What is rare is the case where the law lands on someone who is not making excuses, not shifting blame, not trying to manipulate the room, but simply trying to survive one unbearable day at a time. That was the kind of case I saw on a bitter morning when a widow walked into court carrying a parking citation she should never have been forced to defend. I knew before she even reached the podium that this was not the usual routine. Courtrooms have a rhythm. People either come in ready for a fight, ready to perform, ready to charm, or ready to deny the obvious. This woman looked like she had no energy left for any of that. She was dressed neatly, but the neatness had the feeling of effort without strength. The sort of effort people make when grief has already taken the best part of them and all they have left is habit. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen, her shoulders heavy. She was holding the citation as if it weighed 50 pounds. Now let me make something clear. A courtroom is not a tissue box with a flag behind it. It is not a place where every sad story wipes away every rule. Sympathy is not a defense. Tears are not evidence. If you break a rule, there is generally a consequence. That is what keeps a society orderly. But law without judgment is not justice. It is bureaucracy. And if you are going to put a human being in a black robe and give that person authority, then you expect something more than a mechanical recitation of rules. You expect intelligence. You expect proportion. You expect common sense. Her name was called, and she walked forward carefully. When I asked what happened, she answered in the voice people use when they are afraid that speaking plainly will make them cry. She told me that the day before, she had buried her husband. They had been married for 32 years. He had died after a short battle with cancer. There is no good cancer, and there is certainly no good way to watch someone you love disappear in front of you. She said the funeral had taken place the previous afternoon. Family came, neighbors came, children and grandchildren came, flowers came, food came, sympathy came. Then, by evening, everybody went home, which is usually the cruelest part of grief. The rituals end, the chairs are folded, and the person who has lost the most is left alone with the silence. She said she tried to sit in the house, but every room felt impossible. His glasses were still where he had left them. His robe was hanging behind the bedroom door. His favorite mug was on the kitchen counter. Every object had become a witness. She could not sleep. She could not breathe. So at around 2 a.m, she got into her car and drove. She drove past the places that had mattered in their life together. The restaurant where he proposed, the hospital where their children were born, the park where they used to walk. Then she drove to the cemetery. She parked near the gate because it was as close as she could get. The place was closed, but she could see the fresh ground where they had buried him. She sat there in the dark and talked to her husband because grief does not care whether a conversation makes sense to anyone else. Sometimes talking to the person you lost is the only way to feel that love has not been erased by paperwork, flowers, and dirt. She stayed there longer than she realized. Dawn came. A parking enforcement officer saw the car and wrote her a citation because the area near the gate was restricted. That, according to the ticket, was the offense. Now, I'm not saying signs do not matter. I am not saying rules vanish because someone is sad. I am saying that when the state gives a person authority, even authority as small as writing a parking ticket, it expects that authority to be used with a brain attached. If you see a woman sitting quietly outside a cemetery at sunrise, not blocking traffic, not causing danger, not creating a disturbance, maybe this is the moment to act like a human being instead of a stapler with legs. Rules exist to serve order and safety. They do not exist to punish heartbreak. I asked her how much the citation was. $75. That amount may not sound catastrophic, and in many cases it is not. But context matters. A A $75 ticket feels very different when it lands on top of medical bills, funeral expenses, exhaustion, and the first morning of widowhood. In that moment, it was not just a fine. It was one more official message from the world telling her that even grief must stand in line and pay. I asked a few simple questions. Was she parked there in defiance of prior warnings? No. Was her vehicle creating a hazard? No. Had she argued with the officer? No. Had she intended to ignore the rule? No. She had not even noticed the rule. She was not there because it was convenient. She was there because the life she knew had ended 12 hours earlier, and she was trying to figure out how to exist in the next hour. That matters. Too many people confuse strictness with wisdom. They think saying, rules are rules, is proof of principle. It is not. It is proof that they have stopped thinking. A child can repeat a rule. An adult in authority is supposed to know when applying the rule serves its purpose and when it simply adds cruelty to chaos. Parking enforcement is about order, safety, and access. It is not about punishing a widow for sitting near her husband's grave in the dark. So I told her exactly what I thought. I said, you were not joyriding. You were not shopping. You were not meeting friends for breakfast. You were sitting outside a cemetery after burying your husband. That is not misconduct. That is grief. You could see the change in her face immediately. It was not relief that she had won something. It was relief that somebody in authority had finally described the truth instead of hiding behind procedure. Then I dismissed the citation completely, not reduced, not delayed, not converted into some ridiculous payment schedule that would require her to spend the next 3 months mailing checks while trying to learn how to sign documents without crying. Dismissed because that was the only sensible outcome. Now, people love to ask a question at moments like this. They say, if you dismiss this, where does it stop? It stops where judgment stops. That is the answer. Courts are not vending machines. You do not insert tears and receive mercy. This was not a performance. This was not manipulation. This was a specific set of facts that any rational adult could evaluate. No danger, no intent, no disrespect, no pattern, just grief. The law provides discretion because life refuses to arrive in identical packages. Without discretion, a courtroom becomes an assembly line. And when justice becomes an assembly line, ordinary people stop trusting it. They begin to think the system has no eyes, no ears, and no pulse. Respect for the law depends in part on the belief that somebody, somewhere in the process, is still capable of seeing reality. The woman began to cry after I dismissed the ticket, not theatrically, not loudly, not to make a point. She cried the way exhausted people cry when they have spent hours bracing for one more blow and finally realize it is not coming. She said, "Thank you for seeing me as a person." That sentence stayed with me because that is really what many people lose when they enter a legal system while struggling. They lose personhood first. They become a case number, a fee, a form, a hearing date, an obligation. The law has to be structured, but it does not have to be blind to humanity. There is an enormous difference between orderly procedure and cold indifference. One builds trust, the other corrodes it. I thought afterward about the officer who wrote the citation. I am not interested in demonizing every public employee who makes a poor judgment call, but I am interested in standards. A person who carries authority, whether that authority is large or small, represents the state to the citizen standing in front of them. A police officer, a clerk, a code inspector, a judge, a parking officer. All of them shape whether the public experiences government as fair or as foolish. If ordinary people experience only rigid indifference, they stop believing that fairness exists. And once that belief collapses, everything becomes harder. Public service is not supposed to be a contest to see who can be